My brother told people I was unstable because I found the one thing he never wanted seen, a hard drive, hidden in my father's office, with contracts I never signed. And $50 million they thought I'd never trace. They took my name, my seat at the table. They even threw a dinner in my honor, without inviting me. But I didn't scream. I documented. And when the truth played out in that quiet room, he couldn't stop the silence from speaking louder than him. So now I ask you, what would you have done if it was your own brother? I didn't go into that study to find a fight. I went in to help my mother clean out the mess Dad left behind. Boxes of invoices, unpaid HOA notices, yellowing receipts from a decade of real estate blunders and charity dinners. He'd been gone 2 years, and the room still smelled like the cologne he swore by. The leather chair hadn't moved an inch. Dust had settled into the grain of the oak bookshelves like nobody dared touch what once belonged to the man of the house. I bent down near the bottom shelf, where the real junk always lived. Mom never reached that low. She couldn't bend well anymore, not since her second hip procedure. Tucked under a row of software manuals was a cardboard box with a label faded and cracked. Retired drives, do not erase. Not do not throw away, do not erase. Inside, hard drives, labeled in Sharpie, just like he used to mark his coffee mugs when Edric would accidentally take them to work. One drive had a piece of masking tape on it, thick with dust and a half-smudged message. Trust me, 2021 audit. My stomach didn't turn. Not yet. I just put it in my bag, like it was another piece of trash Dad didn't finish dealing with before the cancer did. That evening, I sat at my dining table, plugged it in. I expected tax folders, or if I was lucky, those awful family videos he used to edit with bad transitions and too much slow motion. What opened instead was something called Donor Clean Accounts. Another folder read Asia Corp Wire Map. One more, Shadow Ops Notes. I remember blinking, once, twice, waiting for my screen to crash or freeze. It didn't. These weren't accident files. This wasn't digital clutter. I clicked on the spreadsheets, encrypted. I bypassed that. Dad always used the same key phrase, his anniversary date. Inside, wire transfers, routing codes, a list of foundations that only existed on paper. My name showed up as initial reviewer on at least 4 contracts, but I'd never seen a single one before. They weren't just hiding something. They had built a structure out of my signature, and I hadn't even known I was the scaffolding. This wasn't oversight, I whispered to myself. This was a deliberate blindfold. I spent 2 hours reading. I read until my eyes hurt, until my tea went cold, until my jaw clenched. Then I wrote an email, not dramatic, not emotional, just factual. Subject, 2021. Drive, urgent clarification. Needed recipients, Edric, primary. Camille, CC. Mother, CC. Body, found this during cleanup. A few contracts have my name attached. I'm not accusing anyone, but I'd appreciate clarity before I make assumptions. Attaching screenshots, please advise. I double-checked spelling. I hit send, then I waited. No reply that night, or the next. I figured maybe they were busy. Camille was always busy spinning stories on LinkedIn about how leadership is just empathy wearing heels. By day 3, the silence got louder. On the 4th, my access to the Lynn Group's internal finance folders was revoked. The shared drive with family legacy documents, gone. Password rejected. I didn't need a reply anymore. They'd already given me one, loud and clear. They didn't just ignore me. They shut the door, from the inside. I opened the hard drive again. This time, I copied everything to a fresh flash and slipped it into the cufflink box my father once used. The one with a small gold O etched on top that he said stood for only daughter. I stared at that box for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called Ray. 3rd ring in, I hung up. I wasn't ready to hear disappointment in a voice I still trusted. As kids, Edric used to say, "You talk too much for someone who doesn't understand money." I used to laugh. I stopped laughing at that line tonight. Later, I checked LinkedIn. My profile had been viewed 19 times in one day from an anonymous account. A day after that, I got mail. No return address. Just a sticky note inside the envelope with one word written in capital letters. Don't. I didn't sleep. Instead, I uploaded the drive's contents to a hidden cloud account under an old nickname I hadn't used since college, something they wouldn't guess. And just before bed, I sat down for dinner. I folded my cloth napkin into a lotus. Dad taught me how when I was 9, said it helped calm your hands when your head was loud. Mom sat across from me. She looked up, saw the fold, reached over. "Still doing that childish thing?" she muttered, pulling the napkin away and laying it flat. I didn't argue. I just stared at the empty chair to my right, the one Dad used to sit in. The lotus used to mean peace. Tonight, it felt more like armor. I was pouring the second cup of coffee when the phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer right away. I just let it buzz until the silence settled again. Then I picked up. "Lunch," she said, with a tone so rehearsed it made my molars itch. "Just us girls. No stress, okay?" That word, stress, it stretched out longer than it should have, hung in the air like steam from a pot about to boil. I knew the setup before I even said yes. When people start a sentence with "don't take this the wrong way," I muttered to myself after the call ended, "you already know you will." I opened the hard drive that morning, not for digging, just for reassurance. I backed it up to a separate flash drive, encrypted the folder, and dropped it inside the hollow part of a candle holder I kept in the drawer near my desk. Just in case. Just in case. What? My father used to say, "Trusting family is easy. It's knowing when not to that keeps you safe." I dressed simple, nothing loud. Neutral colors, flat shoes, and a smile I kept in my pocket until I needed it. The moment I walked into Mom's house, I knew this wasn't just lunch. The table was set for 3, not 2. Napkins folded into tight triangles, too tight. The kind of precision that only shows up when someone's trying to fake normal. She hummed while she moved around the kitchen, something classical and out of place, like trying to play Mozart over a fire alarm. Camille walked in 20 minutes later, all air kisses and fake surprise. "Oh, I didn't know you were coming too," she beamed, placing her purse gently by the chair already pulled out. And then Edric joined the room, not in person, just a screen propped up at the end of the table. His face pixelated slightly, as if even the internet didn't want to render him clearly. I sat, they sat, and for a few minutes, we did the thing families do when they pretend nothing's wrong. Small talk, half smiles, hollow laughs. Then Mom said it. "You've been under a lot of pressure lately, Odessa. Maybe talking to someone could help." I didn't blink. Camille chimed in like she was reading off a brochure. "There's a clinic, actually. Wonderful people. We already made an appointment, just to ease everyone's mind." Everyone's mind. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a lunch. This was a pre-intervention disguised in linen napkins and steamed rice. They weren't worried about me. They were insulating themselves from me. I didn't flinch, didn't push the plate, didn't storm out like they probably rehearsed for. I nodded, smiled, said, "Thanks for caring." Internally, though, I filed every word, every glance, every manipulation. They were treating me like a glass that's already cracked, like one more touch would shatter me. But the thing about cracks, they let you see what's underneath. I excused myself to the restroom. The mirror didn't lie. My face looked calm, but there was a tension in my jaw I hadn't noticed before. A quiet anger, not explosive, just alive. I remembered something a therapist once told me in college, back when I had tried to fix myself for everyone else's comfort. "You're not broken," she'd said. "You're just tired of pretending you're not hurt." I walked back out, my chair still warm. "Thanks again," I said softly. "I'll think about it." Mom reached for my hand, held it just long enough for the sentence to land. Just, "Don't ruin everything your father built." And there it was. The shift, the warning inside the wish, the real message. We'd moved from denying my voice to denying my father's values. I stood, thanked them again, and left before my teeth cracked from biting down everything I wanted to say. That night, I opened my laptop and requested a full copy of my medical history from my old therapist's office. Then I went through every shared folder I'd ever given access to. Removed them one by one. By midnight, I'd created a new encrypted drive, labeled it Lotus Ledger. Quiet, clean, isolated. I uploaded the contracts, the folder lists, the screenshots, not all, just enough. They want to bury the truth in therapy notes, I wrote on a post-it near my monitor. I'll bury my fear in evidence. But digital still felt too vulnerable, so I picked up a legal pad and started writing. Handwriting, line by line, date by date, names, amounts, rooms where conversations happened, lies spoken with a smile. That's how I spent the rest of the evening, drawing a timeline of my own erasure. At one point, I stood in the kitchen, mug in hand. The same tea Mom served earlier sat in mine now. Steam curled up, bitter, sharp. Was I really the unstable one, or just the one who didn't benefit from silence? I remembered my father once saying, "The loudest lie is often dressed in calm." I see it now. This battle wasn't just with Edric or Camille or even Mom. It was with the version of me they'd sculpted over decades. The obedient daughter, the quiet sister, the fallback plan. Maybe I'm not here to restore the family. Maybe I'm here to end the cycle. The morning after that lunch, I opened my laptop like I always did on Thursdays. I wasn't expecting anything, but my fingers moved on autopilot. Calendar, email, shared drive. Nothing looked unusual until it did. The Thursday strategy call wasn't there. That meeting never moved, never canceled, never skipped, rain or shine, boardroom or Zoom. It was carved in stone. I refreshed. Nothing. I checked the shared folder. Access denied. A beat passed. Then another. You don't lose a seat at the table, I thought. They just stop setting a place for you. I hovered over Ray's number, but my thumb didn't hit call. There was nothing to say that I hadn't already written in documents, flagged in screenshots, whispered to myself in the dark. I logged out, not just from the system, but from the idea that this was still a misunderstanding. That afternoon, I got a text from my cousin Elena. Just 5 words. Are you okay? Looked weird. I didn't know what she meant until I checked the Lynn family chat, the one with baby photos, last-minute dinner plans, and group arguments over who forgot Aunt Tammy's birthday again. It was gone. I opened the backup thread. It had a new name now. Core Leadership. My name wasn't on the member list. They didn't block me, I thought. They just redefined the family without saying it. I walked 3 blocks to a small cafe where I used to finalize budget decks. Ordered a black coffee, no milk, no sugar. Just bitterness straight up. The corner booth was empty, my old spot. I sat down and opened my notebook, not my laptop. The smell of burnt toast hung in the air. Someone's phone buzzed a little too loud. None of it mattered. I started writing names, not just Edric or Camille, but the quiet ones, the ones who said nothing, the ones who smiled at me last week and probably clapped for Edric yesterday. People don't need to stab you to help bury you. They just have to stand still. While I was listing those names, I glanced out the window. A black sedan parked across the street, same make, same dent on the passenger side that I'd seen outside my apartment building last night. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe I was being watched. I closed the notebook, left cash on the table, and walked to the back hallway toward the restroom. There was a side exit I remembered from years ago. I slipped out, looped around the block, came back to the same corner from a different direction. The car was gone. Back at home, I checked my router. A new device had pinged it an hour ago. Unrecognized, too close in signal range. I didn't panic. I unplugged the modem, put my phone in airplane mode, sat at the kitchen table with the same notebook, and wrote one line at the top of the next page. It started. First name below that, Edric. Funny how some habits take a while to die. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I flipped back through old pages, found a folded note I'd tucked away when I was 16. It was the business pitch I gave my dad the summer before he got sick. I'd worked on it for weeks, revenue projections, competitive analysis, marketing strategies. He told me it was brilliant, called me the brain in the background. That was his nickname for me. But when the pitch was presented to the board, it wasn't my voice reading the numbers, it was Edric's. He'd said, "She helped me shape it." Camille laughed. Later, she said to me, "It's cute when you play executive." Back in the present, I stared at that note. Then I tore it in half and threw it in the trash. I wasn't almost anymore. I was the ledger they forgot to lock. I started building the real timeline, by hand. One page for data, one for betrayals, one for leverage. Green, red, blue. Systems speak in patterns, but patterns start with lines. I'd start mine here. The next morning, a message buzzed on my phone. From Mom. We missed you tonight. Hope you're doing well. I scrolled down. Attached was a photo from a dinner. Family-style layout. Long table, 5 chairs, a candle where mine used to be. I stared at the screen. No reaction. Not hurt, not angry, just still. Then I whispered, "Thanks for the candle." I closed the message. Now let's see what I can set on fire. I wasn't looking to find anything new that morning. I just wanted to double-check old audit folders, confirm details, make sure I wasn't imagining ghosts. It was quiet. I hadn't opened the curtains yet. The apartment had that cold feel of unbothered truth, the kind that wraps around your shoulders when the silence has already made up its mind. I opened a familiar folder. It prompted a password. That stopped me. I'd never locked this file. I tried my old admin key. Denied. Called Ray. Didn't bother with pleasantries. "Can you bypass an encrypted Lin folder?" He laughed. "You mean the ones you used to run?" 10 minutes later, I had access again. Inside were documents, PDFs, financial transfers with 6, 7 zeros, international wires, Cayman Islands, Singapore. And there it was, my name, full legal name, title, signature. I froze. I don't know how long. I had oversight clearance. Never execution, never disbursement. And yet, I was listed as the authorizer on fund movements totaling millions. "I didn't sign these," I whispered, but I knew exactly who had access to the signature generator. And she wore neutral tones and designer pity. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Lauren, my former assistant. She now worked for a consulting firm downtown. "Camille asked for access to your archive 2 weeks before you left," she said, voice low, unsure. "And you didn't tell me?" She hesitated. "I thought you knew. I was told you were taking time for your mental health." There it was again. That line, used like a soft weapon, cutting without blood. They didn't forge my signature. They forged my downfall, one whisper at a time. That evening, I was scrolling through news clips and press releases when a photo caught my eye. A private recognition dinner hosted by the Lin Group. Theme, Celebrating Women of Innovation. There was Camille. On stage. Accepting an award for operational excellence. The words on the screen behind her were ones I'd written years ago. Bullet points I could quote in my sleep. Not one mention of me, not one seat at that dinner, not even a blurry photo in the background. They hadn't just erased me. They built a podium on top of the gap I left behind. I downloaded every image, every video, time-stamped them, stored them in 3 separate folders. Redundancy wasn't paranoia, not anymore. When they pretend you didn't exist, you start collecting receipts like oxygen. The next morning, I printed 3 documents, side by side, my real signature, the forged one, and the version used in those fund transfers. I layered them under tracing paper, marked the curves, compared slants, noted spacing. Then I slid them into a folder labeled Intentional Misrepresentation. No caps, no red pen, just facts. I called Nora Chen. She used to sit behind me in contract law. Now she runs her own boutique firm. We met at her office. Quiet, minimalist, no receptionist. She reviewed everything in silence, eyes moving fast but careful. "This is damning," she said. "You realize that?" "I'm not suing," I replied. She blinked. "I'm preparing. I want to know where I stand, what I'm liable for, what they'll try to pin." She leaned back, nodded slowly. "You always did like to know your exits before you walked into a room. The world rarely gives justice," she added, "but you can always give it consequences." Later, I sat at a cafe down the block, needed something warm. The waiter handed me a napkin, triangle folded. "Ma'am," he said, "one of the ladies from the Lin event was here earlier. Said your folding trick was outdated." I didn't answer. I took the napkin, unfolded it, and folded it again. This time, a perfect lotus. Just like Dad taught me. They stole my design. They erased my name. But they still can't fold it like I can. The text came before coffee. I hadn't even brushed my teeth when my screen lit up with a message from someone I hadn't worked with in 3 years. Hey, saw Tasha's announcement. Guess you're not working together anymore? I sat there, blinking at the screen. The weight of that name hit my chest before I even tapped the link. There it was. A polished press release. Tasha Lim appointed Strategic Media Director, Lin Family Holdings. Her headshot beside a quote about protecting legacy with discretion and empathy. Discretion. Empathy. My coffee machine beeped behind me, but I didn't move. The last time I saw Tasha, we sat at a bar in Redwood City. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your family's silence speaks volumes, but you've always been the loudest truth in the room." Now she was the one writing their silence into statements. She wasn't just a friend. She was the only one who ever heard me think out loud without twisting it into threat. I locked my phone screen, placed it face down, not out of anger, something worse, settling, like water stilling before it turns cold. By noon, the storm got louder. A tag notification buzzed. Someone had mentioned me in a comment thread under a Medium article. When ambition becomes paranoia, a family's silent grief. I knew it was about me before I opened it. An unnamed younger sibling, the article said, who struggled with clarity during a time of internal corporate strain. Mental health concerns allegedly interfered with operational trust. Her actions, described by insiders as erratic, forced the family to take protective steps. There were phrases in there that weren't public, not even close. Phrases I recognized from therapy notes. Notes I wrote over 10 years ago when I thought healing was something you could purchase in 50-minute sessions. Camille had PR access. Tasha had agency reach. That meant they had the access and the teeth. I called the clinic. Got a student intern on the line who stuttered when I asked who had updated my emergency contact last fall. The name listed is Eileen Lin, relationship, mother. Of course. They didn't just erase me, they rewrote me. I left the apartment without changing clothes, didn't bring anything but my keys and wallet. Walking through downtown San Jose, every window reflection felt like a mirror that forgot me. Every ad, every post, every voice seemed to hum the same refrain, "You're the problem." I ducked into a cafe, ordered nothing, sat in the corner and watched. A group of women near the window laughed. One of them had Tasha's posture. Head tilted, hand moving with the same fake humility she used in client meetings. Then I heard it. One of them, voice too casual, said, "You either shut up or you end up trending for all the wrong reasons." My fingers curled into my palm. If I cry, they win. If I rage, they twist it. I reached into my bag, pulled out my journal, opened a blank page, and wrote one word, facts. Then I started listing what I still had, what they hadn't taken. Proof, timelines, access logs, original drive. My voice. Around 7:30 that evening, the phone rang again. Ray. "I saw the article," he said. "This isn't PR, Odessa. They're laying groundwork. It's war." He offered to extract the metadata, trace the article's original upload. He didn't need to ask if I wanted that. We both knew I did. "What made you call me tonight?" I asked. Ray paused. "Because once, back in that boardroom, you looked me in the eye and said, 'Never let the loudest person be the only one speaking.'" I let out something between a sigh and a laugh. It didn't reach my throat. "They want you quiet," he added. "They want you invisible." "I know," I said, staring at my reflection in the microwave door. "But all I see now is redacted truth." Later that night, I opened the drawer where I used to keep my folded lotus napkins. They were neat, stacked like they always had been, except for one. One was missing. In its place, a note written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Not everything needs to be ironed flat to look clean. My hands trembled, not from fear, from recognition. That napkin had been folded the night of my father's funeral, the last one I made that day. They weren't just killing the truth. They were mocking its memory. The envelope didn't come with a stamp. No sender, no return address. Just my name, handwritten, slanted left, all caps. It was stuffed into my mailbox like a takeout flyer. I almost tossed it with the rest. Utility bills, a grocery coupon, a newsletter from a yoga studio I never signed up for. But something told me to stop. Back upstairs, I peeled it open with the tip of my key. Inside were 3 printed contracts. All of them had my name at the bottom, my title, my signature. But this time, they were followed by a second page on each, marked Original Version. Red pen, handwritten notes, timelines. One line read, Inserted after approval. See metadata. Taped to the top was a yellow sticky note. You're not crazy. You're right. Don't stop. My stomach didn't twist. I didn't pace or cry or call anyone. I turned on my laptop, logged into the building's security footage. The hallway cam caught a blurry figure in a hoodie. Tall, left-handed. I knew that lean, that gait. Ray. It wasn't panic that settled in. It was clarity. Now I had proof they didn't just manipulate documents. They tried to overwrite history. By mid-afternoon, I was in a corner office that smelled like leather-bound books and unsweetened tea. Nora Chen sat across from me, a legal mind sharp enough to cut through anything, but soft enough to never flinch when you spoke from pain. She looked over the files in silence. No commentary, no face-pulling, just reading. These show post-signature edits, she finally said. If this hits the press, it's a bloodbath. Arbitration at best. Prison if it lands wrong. I'm not looking to sue, I said. She raised an eyebrow. I'm looking to be prepared. I want to know exactly what my exposure is. I want to know what they'll say about me when this explodes, and I want it to explode on my terms. Nora sat back, crossed her legs. Most people wait until it's too late. I waited long enough. We talked timing. Contingencies. How far they could smear me before the law would see it as character assassination. The truth, she said, won't be enough. You'll need precision. You'll need silence until they can't breathe without it. I left the office just before dusk, the sky still bright enough to reflect off the building's glass like a warning. I didn't go home right away. I stopped at my storage unit. Inside, buried beneath old boxes and a bin labeled Dad's Desk, Do Not Touch, I found a drawer taped shut from the inside. Underneath, a flash drive. Black. No label. Back at my apartment, I plugged it in. Among receipts and scanned contracts was a single file. For her only. MP3. My hand hovered over the play button. Then I clicked. His voice came through like gravel. Low, slow, deliberate. Edric, if you ever use Odessa's name for your mess, I'll leave behind more than words. Pause. I see what you're building, and I see who you're stepping on. If you drag her into this, don't count on me to stay dead where it's convenient. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen, fists clenched, the air in the room no longer cold. It was thick with something else. Presence. He knew. He prepared. And now, I'm the one holding the line. 2 hours later, I printed the full Lin Group org chart and pinned it to my wall. I used color stickers like I was back in college. Red, liabilities. Green, truths. Blue, risk exposure. Then I created a single document, PDF, locked, encrypted, titled Inheritance, Interrupted. Inside, I added every file I had, every signature, every trace of the drive, Dad's audio clip, side-by-sides of forged and original contracts. I uploaded it to one email address, just one, Stanley Huang. No subject, no message. He wouldn't need one. By midnight, my phone buzzed. You'll hear from me soon. I placed the phone down gently, walked into the kitchen, and opened the drawer where my lotus napkins used to sit. One had been moved, unfolded, folded again, but wrong, sloppy, bent at the edges. No one had keys but me. I sat, stared at the poorly folded napkin like it was a line in the sand. They knew I wasn't scared anymore. Now they were. I took the napkin, refolded it slowly, methodically, perfectly, placed it back in the drawer next to the flash drive. This time, when they try to fold me into silence, I fold back with proof. I didn't need an invitation. I didn't need permission. I already knew I was walking into their kingdom with the one thing none of them expected. Certainty. My dress was neutral, not beige enough to disappear, not sharp enough to challenge. I walked through the front lobby of the Willow Glen Country Club like someone heading to a dentist appointment. Steady, quiet, aware. Camille passed me once. Didn't flinch, didn't nod, just kept walking, the click of her heels trailing behind her like a smirk. Edric stood at the far end of the hall, surrounded by men in suits and women holding wine glasses like weapons. They didn't see me, or they chose not to. I used to try to earn space in their world, I thought. Now I let the floor shift beneath it. A server nodded toward a corner table tucked into the edge of the ballroom. I sat, nothing on the table but a water glass and folded napkin. In my purse, a flash drive and a thin envelope. I wasn't on the speaking schedule. I didn't need to speak. Stanley Huang arrived 20 minutes after I did. He sat without introduction, without small talk, just placed his phone face down and adjusted his cufflinks. I waited until his water glass was halfway down before sliding the envelope under the tablecloth. My voice barely above a breath. The real numbers, the original contracts, and the tape. He didn't flinch, just opened the folder. Page 1. Then 2. No reaction. Then he closed it, folded it neatly, and pulled out his phone. 2 minutes later, he stood and walked over to Edric. Whispered something in his ear. Edric's posture changed. Rigid. Pale. His lips moved, but no words followed. Camille glanced over. Smiled tight. Adjusted her blouse like she was smoothing out panic. The room didn't change immediately, but it shifted. You could feel it in the way people started checking their watches, in the way a glass clinked a little too loudly, in how one investor laughed at the wrong time and then looked embarrassed for doing it. Someone in the back left mid-toast. Another guest from Bangkok leaned in, whispered something to his assistant, and exited through the side. I didn't move. I sipped my water. Listened to the murmurs rise like steam from a pot. I didn't make eye contact with my mother. She sat near the center, smile frozen in place, clutching her purse as if it could hold together what was unraveling. Stanley sent a text. I caught only the preview notification. Transfer on hold. It wasn't loud, I thought. But then again, earthquakes don't announce themselves either. The sound of money shifting isn't a crash. It's a murmur. A silence that kills slower, but deeper. 20 minutes later, Stanley returned to the table. I've been watching, he said. You've been careful. They thought I was emotional, I answered. I was documenting. He nodded, no smile. The tape won't go public. My legal team will hold it, for now. I gave a slow nod. No agreement, no gratitude, just acknowledgement. If you ever want to build something with fewer ghosts, he added, there's a place for you on my board. Right now, I said, I'm not building. I paused, eyes locking with Camille across the room. I'm unburying. He stood, shook my hand. Not warm, not cold, just clean. Then left. I waited until the lights dimmed. Then I rose, walked to the buffet table, picked up a plain cloth napkin, and began folding it slowly. Lotus, fold by fold, crease by crease. I didn't look down once. When it was done, I walked it over to the center of an empty table, set it gently, smoothed the edges. A young waitress walked over, tilted her head. Would you like to sit here? I smiled. No, I just wanted them to remember who showed them how. Then I walked out, my chair untouched. I walked into that hall like I had nothing left to prove. Because by then, I wasn't on the list. But no one stopped me. That's the thing about silence. You wear it long enough, it stops needing permission. Gold everywhere, fabric draped like royalty, spotlights beaming down on a logo that used to mean something to me. Lin legacy, building the future, honoring the past. There was no place for the present. Camille floated from guest to guest like a hostess with something to hide. Eileen sat up front, the corners of her smile pulled too tight to be real. And Edric stood just off stage, adjusting his cufflinks like he was prepping for coronation. Then I saw it. The watch. My father's. A Seiko with a scratched face and leather band. The one he wore to every boardroom fight and every one of my piano recitals. It used to sit in his sock drawer. I know, I put it there after we buried him. Now it sat on Edric's wrist, worn like it belonged. He didn't inherit it. He stole it, just like everything else. The room dimmed. A spotlight cut the chatter. Edric took the stage. He opened with the usual fluff: family, vision, sustainability. Then he leaned into the podium, looked out at the crowd, and said, "Business is not a place for emotional volatility. We must lead with logic, not sentiment, especially the kind that often derails women in leadership." It landed like a punch disguised as policy. A few chuckled. Some exchanged glances. Camille blinked too quickly. Someone near me whispered, "Did he just say that out loud?" I didn't react, but social media did. I saw the flickers of phone screens, the quiet typing under the tablecloths. One caption read, "Guess the patriarchy never took a day off." I moved toward the media booth. The lead tech was sipping soda, bored out of his mind. I handed him a flash drive. "Play this when he's done," I said, calm, measured, like I was asking him to switch playlists at a wedding. Edric rapped with something about honoring the foundation our father built. Then the screen behind him went dark. A pause, and then his voice, not Edric's, my father's. "If you ever use Odessa's name for your mess, I'll leave behind more than words." The room froze. Then came the images. Screenshots, bank statements, overlays of contracts, mine and the ones doctored with forged approvals. A final slide. Verified by Stanley Huang's legal office. Gasps. Chairs shifted. Forks clinked against plates as hands slipped. Eileen's hand covered her mouth. Camille stood up and walked fast toward the booth. Too late. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" Another said, "She's been sitting on this?" And I stood. Not on stage. Not behind a mic. Just still. I didn't need volume. I had evidence. One sponsor left mid-course. A major investor tweeted, "Due diligence begins now." Edric fumbled his response, tried to reach for a joke. The room gave him nothing. Camille didn't come back. I didn't move until Eileen appeared beside me. "This," she hissed, "is what your father would have never wanted." "No," I said. "He wanted the truth. You all just taught me how to bury it. Tonight, I dug it up." She blinked, her mouth open. But I was already walking. The crowd moved around me like I wasn't there. But this time, they weren't ignoring me. They were reacting to the shockwave. As the staff started clearing plates, I spotted one table left untouched. At its center, a single lotus napkin, perfectly folded. I walked over, stared at it for a breath too long. Then I unfolded it, smoothed it flat, walked away. A crown isn't what you wear. It's what you refuse to be defined by. The envelope came on a Tuesday, plain white, no markings, city registry seal in the corner. I opened it over the sink, hands still damp from washing a coffee mug. Inside, confirmation. The condo, the one Dad had left to me in his will, was no longer mine, transferred 3 months ago, signed off by someone with power of attorney. I recognized the signature, slanted, deliberate, familiar in a way that didn't shock me anymore. Mom's name, no yelling, no pacing, no fists through drywall, just a deep breath and a drawer sliding open. I pulled out the condo keys. Still on the ring Dad gave me the year I moved in. A cheap wooden tag with Odessa's place etched in fading marker. I placed them in a cardboard box, labeled it, "Return. You can't steal what I no longer need to defend." A few days later, I sat in Nora's office again. The light came in soft through the blinds. The room smelled like old paper and green tea. She read the document, shook her head. "This is winnable, Odessa. Open and shut. It wouldn't even go to trial." "I know," I said. She leaned back, gave me that look people give when they know the next words will sound crazy. "You're not going to fight it, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm not interested in reclaiming square footage. I reclaimed my name." She didn't argue, just nodded, quietly respectful. We drank our tea in silence. It tasted clean. "Most people never get even this far," she said. "You broke a cycle." I left the legal folder on her desk. On purpose. Outside, I walked past a mirrored building. Caught my reflection. I didn't look angry. I didn't look triumphant. I looked like someone who knew. Later that afternoon, I found myself at the lake. The same one Dad used to take me to when I was little. We'd eat peanut butter sandwiches and feed the ducks. I sat on the same bench, alone this time, with a sandwich of my own. The water moved slow. Families passed by. Kids laughed at nothing. Time felt wide again. I remembered what Dad once told me. One day, you'll need silence more than applause. That's when you'll really know you've arrived. I closed my eyes, took a bite, chewed slowly. Across the path, a mother scolded her teenage daughter. The girl didn't respond, just crossed her arms and stared away. I walked over, pulled a folded lotus napkin from my bag, and offered it to her. Sometimes, I said, quiet hands say what mouths can't. No lecture. No lesson. Just a gift. That evening, I found myself in a local community center. Nothing fancy. Just a room with a whiteboard and a semicircle of folding chairs. 10 young women, first-gen college students. Nervous. Curious. I stood in front of them, holding no slides, no printed bios, just my own story. We talked about financial autonomy, contracts, credit, silence, strength. One girl raised her hand. What do you do when your family doesn't believe in you? I looked at her and answered without blinking. You become undeniable. Then you decide if you still need their belief. She didn't nod, but her eyes said yes. The room didn't applaud. It went quiet, not heavy, understanding. That night, I went home, opened my drawer, took out the last napkin, folded it into a lotus, framed it in a shadow box. Underneath, I wrote, "Not for them, for me." I hung it by the door, not to make a statement, not to leave a mark, just to remind myself I'd survived. They rewrote the history. I rewrote the ending. And maybe that's all the justice I ever needed.